אנחנו מאמינים בני מאמינים
אנחנו מאמינים בני מאמינים
ואין לנו מאמין להישואל
ואין לנו מאמין להישואל
אוי אלו אלו אלוהינו אבינו שבשמיים.
The question we're going to address today, which is an obvious question, it's a question that many have asked, either in person or in writing or in email, and you're free to share your questions. You can write them down or email them to emunah@theyeshiva.net. And the question is, can an intelligent person who has studied science and is sensitive to science and believes in the power of science and is a person of reason and intellectual rationality, can such a person accept the existence of God? This is a question that came in, a few questions that came in. And even if who is this God? What is this thing that we call God, Bashefer, Ribono Shel Olam, Eibishter, or whatever the word you use? I want to begin this discussion by telling you a little story. It's one of my favorite stories because it tells the story about so many of us. The story goes like this. Many years ago, there's a machlokas haposkim if it happened 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago, and yesh omrim, the story is still happening as I talk. There was an international conference between all of the fools of the world. Anyone who qualifies as a tippish, as a shaita, as a moron, as a fool, an idiot in Yiddish, joined this conference. It was free. They got first-class tickets. All they had to do was identify themselves as a tippish, as a fool, and they were good to go. What was the nature of the meeting? It was an emergency meeting, and it attracted many fools. The problem was as follows. The meeting happened after Shlomo HaMelech coined a phrase in his book of Mishlei in Proverbs. Shlomo HaMelech wrote, and I quote, Pesi yamin l'chol dover, va'arum yavin dover la'ashura. A fool believes everything because he's a fool or she's a fool. Whatever you tell them, they believe and they trust because they are foolish. A clever person, a wise person, scrutinizes, researches, investigates. The fools thus faced a major dilemma, and that is, for so many thousands of years, they kept their foolishness to themselves. Nobody knew that they were shaitan, but now Shlomo HaMelech gave out the secret. Now, the moment you're going to see somebody believes everything, you're going to know he's a pesi, he's a fool. So the secret came out. That they won't be able to do shidduchim, they won't be able to get into good yeshivas, they won't be able to gain standing in the community, they won't be able to become people of prominence and dignity because immediately everybody will point a finger and say, Da is anar, here's a fool, yamin l'chol dover. The simon was out, and this spelled tragedy. So they debated the problem and the solution to the problem for 7 days and 7 nights. Do you know what the verdict, what the solution was? The solution was the fools decided ki ish echad b'leiv echad, like one man with one heart, that from today on they won't believe anything. Nothing will they ever believe, and that way nobody will ever be able to identify them as a fool. That's the end of the story. The story, however, I think, contains a very profound truth about life. Because sometimes we can be foolish in one extreme, and we could become foolish in another extreme. Sometimes people of so-called religious faith indeed don't use much reason. They profess what we call in English blind faith. But sometimes you meet people or you read articles or books who also profess blind faith in atheism or blind faith in agnosticism with the same irrational commitment and zeal, and sometimes even more. In other words, it becomes a religion in and of itself. A true person of reason never ever becomes bombastic and arrogant. You sometimes hear in arguments between people. True science is always open to investigation. In fact, by definition, science could never make an absolute claim and say something is this way absolutely and certainly, because the very statement runs contrary to the very MO of science. Science could say, based on the information that we have till now, we can make these and these speculations, or we can make these and these conclusions. What we're going to discover tomorrow, this remains also to be speculated. So the first principle in addressing these issues is that for a person to remain truly honest, truly open, what happens is a lot of conversations about this are more emotional than intellectual. But they don't seem emotional. They sometimes seem very intellectual, but they're really very emotional. People have a bias. People have an axe to grind. People have suffered perhaps pain in religious circles. People perhaps have experienced God the way it was taught to them in abusive ways. People perhaps have been shoved down with things down their throat. They have been denigrated or criticized or ostracized. So they have negative emotions, and then they rationalize it, but their rationalizations are not really open because they have a very deep commitment to a particular side. Now that's part of human emotions, but we have to be able to identify it. We have to be able to explore it. Take a look at a practical example. How many of you bought tickets for the Powerball yesterday? You don't have to all raise your hands at once, but besides you, everybody else bought. Or at least 98%. Du bist nicht kein Passi, so you didn't believe. Okay. What were the chances that anybody is going to win? What were the chances? I think 1 in 292 billion. I'm sorry, million. 1 in 292 million. And yet, everyone bought, either confident or hoping or semi-confident or maybe, or you never know. Somebody got to win, I'll be the winner. Now, when you text while you drive, 1 in 4 texters get into some type of accident. How many of you text while you drive? Everyone texts, and when you say you're driving, 1 in 4 get into an accident, or 1 in 5, you say, not me. So when it's 1 in 292 million, it's me. When it's 1 in 4, it's not me. So I ask you, people operate objectively. We believe what we want to believe. Many people believe what makes them comfortable. If I'm comfortable in a certain place, I believe. And then, of course, I rationalize it. Not everybody is really open to truth that will challenge them in a very profound way. And it goes in many different extremes and in many different ways. And I say this to those who ask questions, always with a sense of cynicism and mockery. In the sense that you know you're brainwashed, you're indoctrinated. I'm a person of reason, the person says. I'm a person of science, and you understand that everything you embrace is ridiculous. It's absurd. It worked thousands of years ago for people who weren't rational, but real open-minded people who are rational never believe. And I say, remember that the fools do one of two things. They believe everything, and they believe nothing. That's also foolish. Be open. And that's an introduction to my words this evening. I don't think anybody has ever proven anything to anybody. Especially when you're dealing with issues that are so, especially when you're dealing with issues that are so abstract, so transcendental, invisible, and so forth. I don't even know if the word proof is even workable for this discussion. Tell me what constitutes proof. Person says, Rabbi, prove to me that there's a God. I say, tell me what will constitute proof. What do you want? What exactly will constitute? It's not such an easy. How do you prove something? You look in the dictionary for the definition of proof. Look in different dictionaries and you'll see in every one there's a different definition of proof. How could there be different definitions of proof? Proof itself is a very elusive word. My job certainly is not to prove. Again, most people believe what they're comfortable believing. There could be people, they can hear powerful arguments, but if they're not comfortable with it, they will find a way to dismiss it, intellectually or emotionally. That's how it works. We are not computers. We're made up of lots of different stuff, including very heavy emotions, and that plays a role in everybody's life. Even the greatest scientist, the greatest physicist, biyoidim or shaloyoidim, consciously or unconsciously. What I want to do tonight is something else, not prove anything. What I want to do is, there is a notion among many young Jews and many young people that the yesodus of Yiddishkeit, the yesodus Emunah, the fundamentals of Jewish faith, somehow require blindness, irrational thinking. So somehow you have to be able to be ready to be in a cult to accept it. To prove it, that's a separate argument. You believe what you will choose to believe. But it's unfair for a rational, open-minded person to call the basics of Jewish faith absurd, cultish, ridiculous, childlike. Only a moron who hasn't used his brain and hasn't read a single scientific textbook can embrace these type of ridiculous notions. That, I maintain, is an arrogant statement. It's arrogant. You could say you disagree. You could say it doesn't work for you. You could say you have questions. Our world is a complicated place, and there's a lot of questions. No question. That's a fair statement. But the arrogance to dismiss hundreds of generations of Jews, some of them of unparalleled brilliance and extraordinary minds who devoted their life to thought, to thinking, and did not accept anything for granted. The status quo was never believed just because it's the status quo. This begins with the first Jew, Avraham, who broke every idol, physically and conceptually. To dismiss it all as simply people who grew up in a cult, and when they open their eyes, they'll see there's no basis for it, is arrogant. It's a very unscientific statement. It's not a logical way to approach it. You could say, show me, explain it to me. Those absolute statements usually eclipse deep pain or insecurity or deep anger or indoctrination or simply that you never really thought about it, which is the case for many people. Many people have not thought about these things. That's fair. You could say, I didn't think about it. I think more about my iPhone. That's fine. Then if God exists, that's fine. Or I grew up in a place where the indoctrination was of this nature. Or there could be many other factors. But what we want to show is that a person who accepts from a logical point of view the existence of God is not a blind nut job who is a fundamentalist, religious zealot soon to join ISIS. That's not the case. True, religion has produced monsters. It still produces monsters. In the name of God, millions have been killed. Nobody has to tell this to the Jewish people. We suffered from religion more than any other people in the world. Christianity and now Islam. Since the birth of Christianity and then the birth of Islam a few centuries later. But we always have to distinguish the fact, because as I was telling somebody the other day, are there abusive mothers in the world? Unfortunately, yes. Are there abusive fathers in the world? Unfortunately, yes. Does that mean we should abolish the institution of motherhood? Do not be a mother anymore. Do not be a father anymore. Some people can use motherhood and use it as a tool to hurt children. But the institution of motherhood is the most important institution in the universe. It's the most important and vital reality to raise a new generation of people, and not only in the human race, among the animal species as well. The dedication of a mother, the sacrifice of a mother, the loyalty of a mother, etc. And the same is true with a father. Can medicine be abused? What did Joseph Mengele do with medicine? Mengele Yamach Shemoy was a doctor, a great doctor, and used his medical knowledge to administer and behave in the most sadistic, barbaric, inhumane way that defies the imagination. Does that mean that every doctor should be fired and the institution of medicine should be destroyed? Of course not. The same is true in our case. Now, there's a lot to talk about here, and I have to condense it in one class, or try to. And I want to cover a lot. So I'm going to discuss two aspects. One is what we call, has to do with the macrocosm, and one with the microcosm, meaning the macro is the world at large, the macrocosm, the universe at large, and one, the micro, the individual, the human being. Let me begin with an article that I read that I think is worth repeating. I'm going to not read it word for word, but a few sections of the article with some explanation. This appeared a few months ago in the December 2014 issue of the Wall Street Journal. And I'm going to quote a few paragraphs, and it's going to need a little explanation, which I will insert. Please bear with me. In 1966, Time magazine ran a cover story asking, the cover story read three words. I don't know if any of you remember Time magazine of 1966. I don't. But there was a cover story with three words. Is God dead? Question mark. Many have accepted the cultural narrative that God is obsolete, meaning irrelevant. As science progressed, there is less need for a God to explain the universe. Or as a boy who came to me a few days ago said, Rabbi Jacobson, with all due respect, the notion of Judaism that there is a God was good before science. Now that we have science, now we have a rational way to explain the world. Much more, we don't need supernatural ideas of Emunah and faith. This was the narrative that prevailed in many corners, in many parts of Western society. Yet it runs out, if we can paraphrase, I think it was Mark Twain, when they announced that he was dead, he said that the rumors of my death were exaggerated. The rumors about God's death were a little premature. That's what it seems. The Hesped was written a little too early, right? The one who coined that phrase, it's hard to say, God is dead, was Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche was a German philosopher in the 18th century. So somebody said that, they saw on the wall of a bathroom, right? On the subway, graffiti on the subway wall. So it said, God is dead, Nietzsche, and then there was a sign under it, Nietzsche is dead, God. So that's number one. The eulogy was a little premature. But more amazing is something else. And that is that the recent case for the existence of God comes from a surprising place. And that place is science itself. So those who scream that once we have science, we don't need God anymore, are often now perplexed by the fact, or surprised or hurt by the fact, that it's often science more than any other source in the world that points to God. Here is one story. The same year when Time magazine asked if God is dead, 1966, they featured another headline which is now very famous. There was a world-famous astronomer at the time, Carl Sagan, who announced that there were two important criteria for a planet to support life. Sagan said, you need two conditions for any planet to support life. The right kind of star, and a planet the right distance from that star. That's it. If you have the right kind of star and a planet in the right distance from that star, the planet can become a source of life on it. Now, how many planets are there in the universe? Roughly octillion planets. Do you know how much octillion is? 1 followed by 24 zeros. It's even more money than most of you imagine you're going to have one day. 1 followed by 24 zeros. That's how many planets there are in the universe. So, according to Sagan's cheshbon, calculation that there's only 2 things necessary, 2 criteria necessary for a planet to support life, everybody imagined that there should have been at least septillion planets capable of supporting life. Septillion is 1 followed by 21 zeros. If all a planet needs is 2 criteria to support life, a kind of star and a distance from that star, so they assumed there's going to be 1 followed by 21 zeros planets that are going to be capable of supporting life just like planet Earth. With such spectacular odds, the 1960s saw a major search for what we call extraterrestrial intelligence. A large, expensive collection of private and publicly funded projects were launched in the 1960s, and they were sure that we're going to turn up something soon. We're going to find somewhere from septillion planets, we're going to find somebody, somewhere where we can find our brothers, our sisters on some level. Scientists listened with a vast radio telescopic network for signals that resembled coded intelligence and were not merely random. As years passed, the silence from the rest of the universe was deafening. Ein koil v'ein oina. Deafening silence. Congress in 1993 decided we have better things to do with our money. So finally in 93, Congress defunded SETI, which is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI. But the search continued with private funds. As of 2014, 2 years ago, researchers have discovered what your grandmother would call bupkis. Bupkis is 0 followed by nothing. That's how much extraterrestrial intelligence they discovered. What happened? What happened from 1966 to 2014? Our knowledge of the universe increased. As our knowledge of the universe increased, it became clear there were far more factors necessary for life than Carl Sagan initially supposed. His 2 parameters that he said you need grew to 10, then to 20, then to 50, so that the number of potentially life-supporting planets decreased accordingly. The number dropped to a few thousand planets capable of supporting life. Remember, from septillion to a few thousand, and kept on plummeting. Each year, the number kept decreasing. Then they started to discover new factors that were necessary to support life on the planet. The number of possible planets to support life hit 0 and kept on going lower than that. What do I mean it kept on going lower than that? In other words, the odds turned against any planet in the universe supporting life, including this planet. Probability said that even we should not be here, because it's illogical that our planet, like any other planet, should support life. Today, as I speak, there are more than 200 known parameters necessary for a planet to support life. From 2 to 200. Every single one of these 200 must be perfectly met, or the whole thing falls apart. It's not that Sunday you have one, Monday you have another one, Shmita you have a third one. All 200 factors have to be consistently working together for any planet to support any form of life. For example, without a massive planet like Jupiter nearby, Jupiter's gravity is so strong that it draws away asteroids. 1,000 times as many would hit Earth's surface and destroy us. So in other words, you need a massive planet like Jupiter right nearby for for its gravity to draw away the asteroids from hitting the Earth. And this is one of 200. The odds against life in the universe clearly became astonishing. Yet, we are here, not only existing, but talking about existing. What can account for it? Can every one of these many parameters have been perfect by accident? Simply by accident. No planet is capable of this. That's why we stopped the search, more or less. That's why Congress stopped the search. And yet, this planet, randomly by mistake, has 200 distinct parameters that allow it to support life. At what point is it fair to admit that science suggests that we cannot be the result of random forces? Is it really sheer stupidity and blindness to say that it's logical that we are not here by accident? Doesn't assuming that an intelligence created these perfect conditions require far less faith than believing that a life-sustaining Earth just happened to beat the inconceivable odds to come into being? And this is just one detail. Take, for example, the fact that Earth is in the position where it is. If Earth would be in a tighter orbit around the sun, if the orbit around the sun would be a little tighter, would be closer, it would be incinerated millions of years ago, according to science. It would have been destroyed. If the orbit would have been wider, broader, it would have been destroyed again, completely frozen. If the temperature would be not much higher or lower again, our planet would either freeze or be destroyed. Wouldn't be able to survive. And so, they stopped searching for extraterrestrial life on other planets. But there's much more than this. The fine-tuning necessary for life to exist on a planet is nothing compared with the fine-tuning required for the universe to exist. There is life on our planet, but what about the existence of the universe? What's necessary for that is completely unimaginable. For example, I'm giving here one example. If you know the terms, you'll get it. If not, it's still quite interesting. Astrophysicists now know that the values of the four fundamental forces, gravity, the electromagnetic force, the strong and weak nuclear forces, were determined less than 1/1,000,000th of a second after the Big Bang. Again, the value of the four fundamental forces of our universe were determined less than 1/1,000,000th of a second after the Big Bang. Alter any one value and the universe could not exist. For instance, if the ratio between the nuclear strong force and the electromagnetic force had been off by the tiniest fraction of the tiniest fraction, by even 1 part in 1 followed by 17 zeros, no stars could have ever formed at all. Anyone who thinks about this, you take a gulp. This is quite astounding. Multiply this single parameter by all other necessary conditions. The odd against the universe existing are so astronomical, are so insane, that the notion that it all just happened, defies common sense. It doesn't embrace common sense. It would be exactly like you tossing a coin and having it come up heads 10 quintillion times in a row. Really? Really? It would be like the Powerball. Okay. You buying a ticket, 10 quintillion times you win in a row. And this is much more crazy. The odds for that are much easier to happen than the odds for the universe to exist. So, the astronomer who coined the term Big Bang, Fred Hoyle, he was the person who coined the famous term Big Bang. He said that his atheism was greatly shaken at these developments. A common sense interpretation of the fact suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with the physics as well as with chemistry and biology. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. This doesn't mean others haven't argued with him. This has been a ferocious debate in science. But here is the words of the scientist who coined the Big Bang, which is accepted almost by everybody. There's a famous theoretical physicist, his name is Paul Davies. He said, the appearance of design is overwhelming. There's an Oxford professor, his name is John Lennox. He said, the more we get to know about our universe, the more the hypothesis that there is a creator gains in credibility as the best explanation of why we are here. Will other explanations emerge? He says he doesn't know. But if science always looks for the best explanation, this is the best explanation. What does this all tell us? It tells us this. The greatest miracle of all times, without any close seconds, is the universe. You're looking for a miracle? It's the greatest miracle you'll ever read about, you'll ever experience. Study what it takes. L'chol hadeis. By the greatest atheists or agnostics. What does it take for life to live on to be on our planet and for the universe to exist? And you'll see it's something absolutely astounding and astonishing. Maybe they don't want to call it a miracle. But it's certainly the greatest miracle without any close seconds. It's the miracle of all miracles. It's the one that points with the combined brightness of every star and the cell of every organism to something or someone beyond itself. Wall Street Journal, December 2014. I want to go from the big world, from the macrocosm to the microcosm, and address one item, just one. Thank you. This is a discovery that is really startling. It was made in 1953. It's known as the discovery of the DNA. The body of any living organism, let's begin with the human being, begins with one cell. Literally with one cell. And it reaches close to 100 trillion cells. The body is comprised of almost 100 trillion, not million, not billion, trillion cells. How does it know how to build a body with almost 100 trillion cells in it? Thousands of types of cells. Each is so complex beyond our comprehension. So encoded in the cell is a manufacturer's manual. How to build and operate every single part of the cell. This we call the DNA. In every single cell in the body, in the nucleus of the cell, there is the DNA, which is the chemical blueprint that contains instructions how to build and operate every cell, and every aspect of life is created based on that blueprint. The fascinating thing is, each cell has the entire DNA of the body, and with each cell that's reproduced, it copies over the whole blueprint, the whole manual, into the new cell, so that each of the trillions and trillions of cells contains the manufacturer's manual for the entire body. It's even programmed to correct replications errors. It's like an editor that reviews a newspaper, reviews an article to look for mistakes. It has special protein enzymes that go up and down DNA molecules and repair it second by second. It has a code which has editor enzymes to repair it, like literally an editor looking for mistakes. How now, when the body is building another cell and another cell and another cell, and each cell has to be different, because each cell is there to create another function in the body. That's why we have trillions and trillions of cells. What if it takes the wrong code? What if the nose takes the wrong code? What if the liver takes the wrong code? The kidneys take, there's a churban. The DNA has what we would call a mafteach, an index. Before it has the whole manual, it tells you, it points. This is what you need in order to create this cell. This is what you need in order to create this type. So you have here the DNA, which is basically in the nucleus of every cell. It's a ladder of of billions of rungs. A ladder of billions of rungs, of course tiny, with trillions of messages in order to produce trillions of cells. Basically, the DNA, to use the language if you're familiar, it tells what they call amino acids, how to form proteins. Amino acids come together to form proteins and build cells. Now understand, if you would take the DNA of every living organism, every person, every living creature, every fish, every animal, every plant, from the beginning of the universe, from the beginning of existence that we know, all the DNA would be able to fit into 1 teaspoon. That's how small it is. 1 teaspoon. And you'll still have place in that teaspoon to put in all the letters of all the books in the world. So in such a space, microscopic, the DNA contains in each cell the entire blueprint of the entire body. And therefore, it builds, this is the blueprint from which the entire body is built. What they discovered is about the DNA is that essentially its sequence is letters. It's letters that are the messages contained in the DNA, which then build a body. Now, this is really a fascinating discussion. But now, take a look at something. To say that it's ridiculous, it's absurd, it's illogical to say that the fact that the DNA of every creature in every cell is organized so impeccably to be able to create almost 100 trillion cells that work, with a brain that has trillions of neurons and connections, and a brain that has to make 100 trillion calculations every moment so that the body should exist. And if the amino acids would form proteins in a wrong shape, anything would be in a wrong shape, it would be the destruction of human life. So the organization and the structure of billions of rungs with trillions of messages, organized perfectly in such a space. The DNA is recoiled. It's microscopic, of course. We can't see it. It's today, with technology, we could see the shape. We can discover the shape. To say it's all by accident, it happened by accident, is far more crazy than believing that there's a 747 airplane and that happened because there was a tornado, and from the storm, at the end of the storm, all the pieces formed together to create a 747. Or to look at a sefer, say Chidushei HaRashba, or Rashi and Chumash, or Chidushei Rabbeinu Chaim Alevi al Rambam, or Lahavdil, a play by Shakespeare, and say in the famous metaphor of the Chovos HaLevavos, the ink spilled out. The ink spilled out on the desk, and from the whole mess, a Tosfos was written on Masechta Gittin. Just happened to be that the ink formed together to create letters, and some of them created words, and some of them created sentences, and that's how Talmud Bavli was written. Any person in their sane mind would say that's ridiculous. If you tell me that believing that Talmud Bavli was written by an author, and it didn't happen as a result of an explosion of ink, and I say no, to believe that you're in a cult. Real science tells you it happened through random events. There was no intention, there was no design, it just happened. I'm not sure that the person who says there's an author is the illogical one, or it's maybe the other way around. This is nothing compared to what it would take over billions and billions and billions. Even they argue the world is not older than 15 billion years and a few days. Maybe more than that. It would take hundreds of billions of years, even for slight probability, or possibility, not probability, possibility that it should happen. But now, what's really fascinating about this is everything DNA is the building blocks of the whole of all living creatures, of human beings, of every animal, of every fish, of every tree, of every plant, of every bush. And most of our DNA is identical, but it's the slight differences that make the individuality of the person. Your height, the color of your eyes, your facial features, the color of your hair, the nature of your body. Most of our DNA is identical, even with other forms of life. But those slight, tiny, tiny differences account for the fact that no two people are alike. Some little variation in some point of the DNA, which will probably be extremely effective in eliminating disease, if we can identify that in the DNA, which is what science is working on. It's a fascinating discussion in and of itself. But this is what makes the individuality of every person, of every living creature. And it contains within it the entire secret. So now if you'll ask a question, scientifically today, what is the world built of? What is every cell built of? Every single cell? The answer is information, letters, intelligence. Now, you go take a look at Chumash, and it says, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or Vayihi Or, Ba'asara Ma'amoros Nivra Ha'olam. The world was created through letters, through speech. The whole Sefer Yetzirah, the earliest Kabbalistic text, explains that the universe was created through oisius, through letters, through tzirufim, different combinations of letters. We always thought it's a mystical, spiritual, abstract idea. But this idea is translated into very real science today, embraced by any researcher, and that is that the DNA is basically information, letters. That is at the core of every single cell. Ba'asara ma'amoros nivra ha'olam. It's words, it's letters. I want to read with you here, if you can go to your source. If you can go to your source, this is a piece from Tanya Shara Yichud ve'Emunah Perek Aleph. Take a look. Hine ksiv la'olam Hashem dvorcha nitzav b'shamayim. It says in Tehillim, in Kuf Yutes, your word always stands in heaven. What does this mean? Upirish HaBaal Shem Tov Zal said the Baal Shem Tov, Ki dvorcha shamarta yehi rakia b'toich hamayim. Your words, which words? You said there should be a firmament in the water, in Bereshis. Tevas v'oisius elu einitzavas v'oimdes loylam b'toich rakia shamayim umulubashas b'toich kol rakiyim loylam lachiyosim. These words, these letters, yehi rakia, stand in the heaven constantly to give them life. His words eternally are alive. If the letters would depart and return to their source, the whole heaven would cease to be as though it never existed. This is what Arizal says, Shagam bedoime mamish kumei avonim va'ofar amayim yesh b'chinas nefesh v'chiyus ruchnis, dahainu b'chinas eslapshus oisis adibur me'asara ma'amoris hamachayis u'mahavas asadomim liyis yesh mayim v'efesh alufnei sheshis me'bereshis. The Arizal already said that even rocks have a soul. Even inorganic, inanimate matter has a soul. What type of soul? Everything has in it letters that give it existence and vitality, and is the only reason it doesn't become naught. I, in the 10 utterances of Bereshit, says, God said, let there be a heaven, let there be man, let there be a sun and a moon, let there be light. He doesn't say, let there be a rock. He didn't say, let there be a rose. He didn't say, let there be a hippopotamus. He said, let there be an animal, but not an individual creature, and not a stone. It's the same letters of Asara Ma'amoris that go through combinations and mutations, which he goes on to explain based on Sefer Yetzirah. There's thousands of ways in which letters can be rearranged, and therefore every single creature gets its unique letters that give it sustenance, that give it identity. Now, Now we come to the next step. And here is where Yiddishkeit takes it one step further. When we say there's a creator, there's a mind, there's intelligence, it's not a random, it's not a mistake. And as I said earlier, that science itself points to this more and more and more, even though there are many scientists themselves who debate it for whatever reason. In other words, it's an important debate, but we're not now discussing the reason for every person's position. But the point is that when one studies science, one recognizes this is more and more. Let's see a deeper concept that Yiddishkeit emphasizes to understand this process, to understand what it means, or to put it differently, what is, when we say there's this God behind the universe, what does this really mean? Who is he? So many of you grew up and you always heard a term, comes from Chumash Parshas Veschanan. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Ata hareisa ladas ki Hashem hu Elokim, einoid milvadai. And there's some nice songs on the words. Einoid milvadai, there's nobody beside him. Somebody who dabbles in the works of Kabbalah and Chassidus will know to say that one of the main ideas of the Baal Shem Tov and of his students is the emphasis on Einoid Milvadai. Einoid Milvadai doesn't only mean there's no other God beside him. Einoid Milvadai is there's nothing else beside him. Ultimate Achdus Hashem, complete unity. What does this mean? What does this really mean? So you grow up with it, Einoid Milvadai, Einoid Milvadai. What does it mean? Does it have meaning? Can we apply it to ourselves? But now we can appreciate this somewhat. Let's see how. The Ramban says famously, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'asar, it's the beginning Hashem created. He says whenever it says bara, it means yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. Something from nothing. What does it mean, creation something from nothing? We create something from something. The something from the other something can be very remote, but it's still something from something. For example, you take the seed of an apple tree, you plant it. For a seed to develop in an apple tree is something absolutely extraordinary. We take it for granted. A single seed, how does it develop into an apple tree? The DNA, the brilliance of the DNA, how it develops into an apple tree. And then the apple tree, of course, has to create a synthesis between the male part of the tree and the female part of the tree. What we call pollination, through insects or winds who come and take the pollination from the male part of the tree into the female part of the tree so it can get fertilized, and a new seed is created which will then reproduce either in the flower or in the fruit and so on and so forth. Absolutely phenomenal, extraordinary. When you eat an orange, when you eat a peach, don't take it for granted. Study it. Something phenomenal. But it's still yesh miyesh. From a seed came an apple tree. Proof, from the seed of an apple tree, you'll never get a goldfish. You'll never get a goldfish. From $1, you can make $100. From $1,000, hopefully you'll make $10,000. From $100,000, you should all make $1 million tonight. But you start with something. The silversmith takes silver and turns it into a menorah. And the carpenter takes lumber from a tree and turns it into a beautiful stender or a beautiful table or a beautiful bookcase and so on and so forth. Yesh miyesh, something from something. Creation of the universe we call yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. And this is a major distinction. It's not just Hashem didn't have something to make it from, but it represents something very profound about how we understand cosmology from a Jewish perspective. And this is really the theme of the first few chapters of Shara Yichud ve'Emunah. The origin of this idea that the Baal Shem Tov used to speak about is already in the Shalah. The Shalah speaks about Ein Oid, V'yadaita hayoim v'ashevoisa levavecha, ki Hashem hu Elokim b'shamayim v'al ha'aretz mitachas Ein Oid, we say in Aleinu every day. Also from Dvarim, Moshe Rabbeinu says, doesn't only mean there's no other God, Ein Oid, That's quite obvious that there's no other God. If God is God, there's no two gods. If there's two gods, then God is not God. But Einoid means there's nothing else. How do we understand this? The best, I think, metaphor. There's a lovely book called Something from Nothing by a professor from McGill University, a neuroscientist who's also a chassid. His name is Dr. Yaakov Brouwer. He gives a beautiful metaphor. The metaphor actually comes from Tanya, but he applies it here very nicely. It comes from Tanya chapter 48, but he applies it very nicely to this. And I want to give you an illustration so we should be able to understand what this means. One of the great blessings that the Ribbono Shel Olam gave each and every one of us, and especially the men sitting here have employed it over many years, over the years in yeshiva, or whenever you're sitting at a faculty meeting in the office, it's called the gift of daydreaming. The gift of daydreaming means you're sitting now at the shiur, and it's late, and you're tired, and you're exhausted, and you shut off your iPhone so you can't text. So what do you do? What do you do? What do you do at a faculty meeting? What do you do at a shiur? What do you do for 15 years in yeshiva during the class? Many people do it throughout davening. It's something called daydreaming. Daydreaming means you don't even realize. You start dreaming about a reality, you concoct a whole reality, and you can daydream for 2 minutes. Some experts can do it for 5, and some people can do it for 15 years straight. They wake up just to go to sleep. And for dinner. Daydreaming is a very, very interesting phenomenon. What is a daydream, right? Somebody once said a word, it means when a Gentile wants to get somewhere, he needs either a car or a horse. When we want to travel somewhere, you just start davening Shemona Esrei. You mention God's name, Baruch Atah Hashem, and you go. First class ticket to Australia, to Eretz Yisrael, to Moscow, to London, to California, Miami, and it's always first class. The food is excellent. There's a shower on the plane. In your daydream, you create a reality that is uninhibited, unlimited. You can go shopping in your daydream. You buy the dress, it fits, you return it, and you keep it. Everything works. You can go to a big conference. Yeah. You can imagine yourself giving a performance. You can go to a game. You can fly the world. Anything you want. And in your daydream, you concoct the people. You see the people. You even get angry at the people. You get angry at people. You get jealous. You get angry. You see them jealous from you. You can hear the applause in your daydream. You have emotions. You have faces. You have places. You have times. You can have a whole reality in your daydream. You all know that. In fact, I may have woken up at least 50% of you from a very sweet daydream tonight. Where were you in your daydream? I don't know. Some of you were in Israel. Some of you were back home finishing the challah. Some of you were shopping. Some of you were winning the lottery. Some of you, I don't know where you were. I have enough of my own daydreams. I say to you, Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back. Somebody once asked, was Hashivi, once asked this Talmidim, he said, how do you have a chutzpah? You do a whole Shemona Esrei, then you come to the last piece. The words of my mouth you should accept willingly. You weren't thinking anything you were saying. You finished, you have the audacity to say it. So the boy says, he says, Rebbe, why do you think we're thinking about these words either? We said, we're also not thinking. So what's the problem here? But now let's think about this. I want you to think about this for a moment. When you concoct this daydream in your mind, and you built this whole reality, you may be, let's say, at a game, and there's 30,000 people there eating kosher hot dogs with mustard and sauerkraut. Mahadrim and a mahadrim, of course, glatt kosher. And you're eating it, and it's all there. You see the people, or whatever your interests are. Kedusha, Chol, whatever it is. What happens when you stop daydreaming? What happens to all these people? Anybody? You remember when you woke up, what happens to the daydream? It's gone. Not here. Why? They were all here. What happened? Where'd they all disappear? The answer is, Rabbi Jacobson, it's a strange question. They had no existence outside of you thinking of them. The definition of their existence is that you're thinking of them. They are basically waves of your brain. So the moment you stop thinking of them, They cease to exist because they don't have an existence outside of you actively thinking about them. That is the definition of their existence. So now, if you want them to disappear, you don't have to kill them, you don't have to destroy them, you just stop thinking, so you're not creating them anymore in your mind. In other words, you'll say, wait, this is a strange example. Of course they don't exist when you stop thinking about them, because they don't have an existence outside of your mind. This is the story of the whole universe. This is what yesh me'ayin means. Something from nothing. If I stop thinking about you, you won't stop existing because you have an existence outside of my thoughts. Yesh me'ayin means something from nothing. In other words, nothingness doesn't have within it the potentiality for somethingness. Nothing is the exact opposite of something. So when we say the world was created, yesh me'ayin, something from nothing, on its own, it absolutely has no existence. When you create yesh me'yesh, something from something, the something existed initially. I didn't create its existence. It doesn't exist because of me. It exists independent of me. The artist simply takes colors and a quill and a brush and a canvas and he puts it together, a beautiful piece of art. So it remains there even after he's done, because it's not something from nothing, it's something from something. But when the world was created, it's bara, yesh me'ayin, meaning it's like the daydream. In other words, it has no existence. So what does it mean that it exists? That Hashem thinks, he thinks up the world or speaks up the world every moment, and that is the definition of its existence. That is the meaning of its existence. So that is why, what does Hashem have to do for the world not to exist? One word. One word. What does Hashem have to do for the world not to exist? Nothing. Nothing. He has to do something for the world to exist. So you'll say, wait, Rabbi, this, you're exaggerating. My thoughts, the people in my daydream are not autonomous beings. They can't rebel against me. They don't have free choice. We exist. Don't tell me that we are in God's daydream. We all exist. We have existence, we have independence, we have free choice, we have autonomy. Right. And that's why Bereshis doesn't compare creation to God thinking. It compares creation to Hashem speaking. That's the uniqueness, the depth of the analogy of speech, because thoughts remain inside of me. My thoughts don't have a reality outside of me. My words reach you. My words have a certain independence of me. The uniqueness of creation is that God thinks or speaks the world into existence. What is the definition of the world? The definition of the world is the koyach eliki, the divine energy, the divine words, just like the daydream. The stuff of the daydream is what? Is me. It's my brainwaves. There's no two realities. Nobody ever told me, Rabbi Jacobson, I'm very lonely. So I told them, why don't you daydream that there's 30,000 people living in your brain and you won't be lonely anymore? We all know that advice won't work. You know why? Because who are those 30,000 people? They're you. They're you. They're not an existence outside of you. Their existence is you. It's something from nothing. It doesn't have an existence outside of you. So now think about the whole universe, including you and me. What is it essentially? What is it? So science uses the words DNA. DNA are words. DNA are letters. And the DNA is constantly there. But now let's understand it from a Torah perspective. Especially from a Kabbalah Pnimiyus Torah perspective. What is it? Essentially, these words contain within them, what are they? La'olam Hashem dvarcha nitzav b'shamayim. It's the divine energy, the divine words, the divine thoughts, the daydream, the words Vayomer Elikim that actually create the world. They have no existence outside of Hashem creating them. That is the definition of their existence, just like the characters in my daydream don't have an existence independent of me thinking them. So therefore, when I stop thinking, they're not here. When he stops creating, if the words depart for a moment, they're not here. Where are they? They were never here. It was him creating. That was the definition of their existence. You ever see a speaker with a PowerPoint? He brings a projector, right? He has a laptop, right? The laptop is connected to the projector. The projector projects on a canvas, say, on a screen, on a wall, and you see a beautiful picture. You see a picture of a person, you see a picture of a zoo, you see a picture of a circus, you see text. Now somebody walks in front of the projector, and it's blank. You see his shadow, or somebody takes away the projector, there's nothing here. What happened? Where did it go? Why didn't it stay here? You'll say, what is it? It's simply the rays of light of the projector being projected on the wall. It's not independent. It's not the projector creates something independent of it. It's the light of the projector being projected. You take away the source, there's nothing there because there was nothing there outside of the projector. There was nothing there outside of the projector. So now, let's take a look inside, and then let's bring it back together. Take a look at the second source. Also, Shara Yichad ve'Emunah Peira Gimel. We're going to learn a few lines here, but think about this. V'hinei, acharei advarim ve'emes ha'ela. After explaining everything he explained in chapter 1 and 2. Chapter 1, that the words of godliness are this source of every being. And chapter 2, which I didn't read, is about the difference of yesh miyesh and yesh miyayin, something from nothing versus something from something from nothing versus something from something. Listen to this. Kol maskil yaldavar yavin la'ashuroi. Any really intelligent person who understands something will understand well. Ech shekol nivra v'yeshu be'emes nechshav la'ayin ve'efes mamish. Legabe koyach hapoyel v'ruach piv shebenifol hamahava oisoitomid umetziyoi me'ayin mamish liyesh. That every existing being, every speck of dust, every flake of snow, every drop of rain, every cell, every protein, every chemical, every nivra is really naught in the presence of the power that brings it and gives it existence. Omas, now here's the big question. Every single created being appears as something so yesh, egotistical and substantial. It's because we don't see with our eyes the divine energy and the spirit of his mouth in the created being. Aval ilu nitne rishus la'ayin liris. Olahasiges hachayes v'ruchnias shebechol nivra. Hashefeya boimi moitze pi Hashem beruach piv. If the eye would be able to see the energy and spirituality that flows in every being from God's mouth, we would not see the physicality and substance of it because it's so nullified relative to the energy. Because without it, it would be naught like before creation. And the ruchni that flows on him from God's energy, that's the only thing that brings it out from nothingness to somethingness. Imkain, if so, efes biladoi be'emes. There's really nothing outside of him. Now what does this mean? Let's try to understand this. Take even in plain science, right? When I'm looking at this mic, I'm looking at my hand, I'm looking at a bottle of water, I'm looking at you. Essentially, what am I seeing? I'm just seeing a plain body, a solid body, inanimate matter, a stand, a piece of paper. But we all know that inside of this, there's a whole moving universe. Because everything is made up of atoms. Everything is made up of atoms, including a cell in the body. But everything is made up of atoms. And the atom itself is comprised of what we call subatomic particles. So why does it look like, and there's a movement, the electrons are moving around the atom with an incomprehensible speed, and everything. I don't see it, I see something dead. It's completely dead. Why? So scientifically the answer is because the electrons are moving so fast, and we're dealing with a microscopic material, and it's moving so fast that the impression that it gives to the human eye is solid matter. So I don't have the kalim, I don't have the instruments to be able to see with the regular mitadurach schnittlichen oig, with the ordinary eye, to be able to see what's in the bottom of this. But here the Shara Yichud V'Emunah, the Tanya, is taking it a step even deeper and says, and what's behind all of that? The oisius of Elikus. But it's not that God creates the world. There's God and he creates the world. What is the revolutionary idea here? The Torah Jew does not see intelligence and purpose in the design of the universe. We don't see intelligence and purpose in the design of the universe. Torah sees intelligence and purpose as the stuff of which the universe is made. That is the universe. It's not that there is intelligence and design. There is a God who made the world. No. It's not a God who made the world. It's not that there is intelligence in making this beautiful, beautiful universe of this person. The very stuff of which the universe is made is what? Is divine. It's the Isis. Just like in science, it's the DNA. It's not DNA, right? You have cells that then create something else. When you go and you look at the underlying structure, the building blocks of the human organism, what do you find? You find cells, and within the cell you'll find the DNA. But there's a process. Amino acids, proteins, cells, tissues, limbs, organs, and then they're combined together to create the koyma shleim of a person. So what do we see? We see the outside. But what is it? What is it? There's an underlying building blocks. What is the universe? The universe is not made, created by God. The universe, just like the characters in your daydream, they're not created by you. What are they? What are they? They are you. They're an expression of you. They're not the full expression of you. You have a little more in your brain, hopefully, besides the daydream. But they have no reality independent of you. You have a reality outside of them, but they don't have a reality outside of you. And that's why you have to create them every moment. Because if you're not there, there's no reality outside of you. It is you being expressed. That's why creation happens every single moment. Because if it ceases to be one moment, what do you want should be? It's like taking away the projector. How do you expect on the canvas there should be images? From what? They have their own images. They don't have their own images. It's a projection of the Koyach Eliki, the Chayas Eliki. That's the uniqueness of Yesh Me'ayin, something from nothing. Now, if this is the case, what are the ramifications of this? Let's now bring this together. What are the ramifications of this? The ramifications of this are many, but I want to bring out a few major results of this. And that is, listen to this. When we talk about having a relationship with Hashem, building a relationship with God, serving Hashem, connecting to Hashem, what does this mean? Very good. Say that louder. You heard enough of my shiurim. You knew what to answer. Very good. Say it louder. Say it louder. Shem sich nicht. There's two ways of understanding Yiddishkeit. There's two ways of understanding Yiddishkeit. One way of understanding Yiddishkeit is Elokim b'shamayim v'ani ba'aretz. But he's bigger and stronger than me. So I got to listen. God is in heaven, he's powerful, he's infinite, he's omniscient, he's omnipresent. He has a lot of power and he sets the rules and I have to listen to him. Now on a technical level, yeah, it's true. But that's missing the punchline. It's missing the punchline. To have a relationship with God means to have a relationship with whom? With my truest self. With my deepest self. The very I is a reflection of God's eye. The very yesh of the nivra is a reflection of the yesh amiti. A relationship with God doesn't mean I deny myself, I destroy myself, I crush myself, I become a slave of the big boss. A relationship with God means that you identify your truest energy. You align yourself with yourself. Avodas Hashem means you align yourself, with your DNA, with your true core, with your true energy. So when we say the Baal Shem Tov wanted to bring out Einoid Mulvadai, what does this mean? It's not only a song, and it's not just words. It's a very profound, maybe the profoundest idea about life. And that is, it's not that we are in a relationship with God. God created us. Einoid Mulvadai means that the whole universe and every detail of the universe, the macrocosm and the microcosm, what is it? Essentially, it's Elokus. It's a reflection of Elokus. Avodas Hashem means getting in touch with the truth of the world, with the spiritual DNA of the universe, with the oisius of it. You want to know who you are? You have to find God. That's who you are. You want to suck the marrow out of your life. You want to figure out your deepest amkus. You want to extract and actualize all your kaichas, all your creativity. That's what a relationship with God is. It means a relationship with your deepest energy, which is essentially divine. And that also means that you're always in a relationship. You're always in a relationship. In fact, Hashem is recreating you every single moment, not just intentionally. If He would not, you would cease to be. Every single moment, a new creation, something from nothing right now. That's how deep the relationship is. But He speaks the world, He doesn't think the world. If He would think the world, there could be no distortion. It's all in Him. He speaks the world. In other words, He externalizes the energy. So now I could take the energy and completely misinterpret it. Just like I sometimes say things and people hear what they want to hear. They don't hear what I say. They sometimes hear exact opposite of what the speaker says. That's the metaphor of speech. That's why, interestingly, that's the deep association between simcha and Yiddishkeit. Why is simcha, joy, such a fundamental aspect in Judaism? In Savoy, the whole Teichecha, why? Tachas, Shlevadjam Alkecha b'simcha v'tuv levav. The Rambam says at the end of Hilchas Lulav that this is one of the greatest aspects of Yiddishkeit, the simcha. Chaim Vital says that Arizal was zoichet all of his madregas because simcha shal mitzvah. Never mind, after the Baal Shem Tov, simcha became such a major focus. Why is it so important? So you'll be a depressed Jew. What's the problem? Well, we all know the practical benefits of joy, but there's something much deeper. As long as one doesn't get this, ultimately it's very hard to be a serious Jew b'simcha. You know why? Because let's say I tell you, I want you to be a slave for 90 years. A slave. You repress your taivas, you don't follow your craving, you're a slave to the Rabbi Shalom. But after 90 years, you're going to have babka forever. With a Heisa mikveh, 125 degrees, especially in the winter. And you'll be able to have a coffee and free sushi and a free mortgage, a free tuition, with a stende and a beautiful Vilna Gemara and a hot thermos there. 90 years in Eved, but one day, eternity, you can have Olam Haba. It pays. Very nice, beautiful. But for 90 years, I'm a slave and it's not exciting. That's the real question. Is Yiddishkeit ultimately repressive or liberating? We go back to our last week's class. What is it really? I could tell a person, crush your taivas. One day you're going to get rewarded. One day you're going to get the lottery, the fireball, $1.5 billion. For 70 years, daf sich so what? And hopefully you'll develop a taste. Like lettuce. If you eat long enough, you'll develop a taste. Aber se kommt nicht zu potato chips. So how besimcha can you be? That's why, you'll forgive me, but sometimes you see that somebody once told me, he said, the more religious I become, the more depressed I become. Why? Because the more serious I take life, the more I have to challenge every one of my cravings, and it becomes very hard. And that's why you see sometimes that people associate real Yiras Shamayim with being spiritually and mentally hunchback. You have to be a little fachmurit, a little sad, a little OCD, a little non-social. If you're a happy person, it's frivolous. It's almost hululus. The Baal Shem Tov had a very different shit. That's all if you don't understand Einoid Mulvadi. If you don't understand Einoid Mulvadi, there's ultimately a competition. We don't talk about it, but there's a competition. Elamai, God is the big boss, I surrender. You know why? Olam haba, olam haza, he could punish me, I want his reward, I want cotton candy, I don't want the electric sword. And you know what? If something is motivating you not to do an Aveda, shine. It's brought in Svarim and Sifrei Musa, anything that stops you from doing an Aveda is a good cheshbon. But the oimik of Yiddishkeit is the Havana, that Avodas Hashem ultimately is really connecting with the only truth of existence, with your deepest truth, with the truth of all existence. A relationship with Hashem is not you're enslaving yourself to the big guy. You're not enslaving yourself to the big guy. Avodas Hashem means really realizing that Einoid Mulvadi, the whole world is a shtik halakos. Every moment, every experience, every encounter, every chush, every faculty, every nukuda in a person's life, every cell, every part of the guf and every part of the nefesh, what is it? Ilu nitnu rishus la'ayin liris, what is it? A relationship with God means a sensitivity to the music flowing in the world. The world is music. The world is words. The world is consciousness. The world is intelligence. The world is mindfulness. It's not mindfulness created the world. The sidewalk I walk on, the carpet I step on, the bed I sleep on, the people I talk to. That is not a sidewalk, not a bed. The shoes I wear. It's essentially streaming with life, with vitality. It's all consciousness. It's all mindfulness. It used to be a few hundred years ago, this language would be strange, very superstitious, very weird. Today, if you can't relate to this language, wake up, smell the coffee. This is the language of science. This is the language of physics. This is the language of cosmology. This is the language of quantum mechanics, certainly. This is the language of the new world. The language of the new world is the language in which we can relate to the universe and see that the universe is essentially the universe itself. The stuff of the universe is godliness. Dveikus with Hashem means dveikus with the essence of me, with the essence of you, with the essence of the universe. And there is also another very important, there's a lot, but I want to bring out one more implication of this. Maybe extremely significant and important. Because if even the smallest particle, an event requires constant animation by Hashem's willed thought, He has to actively want to dream it up, bring it into being. Without it, it doesn't exist. So then, obviously, these little details, what we call little details, are of great importance to God. Otherwise, He would not continuously trouble Himself, quote unquote, to actively think them up. So that means every detail of life that we think is garnished, for Hashem, it's extremely significant because He wants to bring it into being. In addition, the fact that He chooses to create our finite world with all of the details and nuances is absolutely astounding. It means that nothing is trivial. The existence of a speck of dust requires the same attention as a galaxy. The existence of a small little creature requires the same attention as hundreds of millions of stars in the galaxy. So the speck of dust, the little person, the little moment is as essential to God's plan as the galaxy. There's a transcendent purpose in everything. So there's no such thing as a coincidence. That's why the same Baal Shem Tov spoke so much about what? Hashgacha pratis. The leaf that turns over. The little encounter. Come on, give me a break. If God really exists, He cares about the leaf. You know what you look like from outer space? Like a Chinese checker, worse. Smaller. A little bean, smaller than a bean. That's only from outer space, from God's perspective. Hashgacha pratis, by divine providence. Every person you meet, every detail of your life. He really cares if you wait 5 hours and 58 minutes after Shabbos afternoon shalom to eat ice cream at Tzoi Shabbos, or 6 hours. This is what he's busy with. It's a little embarrassing, no? He stands with a clock, 5:58, 6 hours, okay, pizza, it's Mitzvah Shabbos, pizza, good. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'motzi lechem min haaretz. This is Judaism. You're making a joke. Person lit a match on Shabbos, so you're going to tell me the big God cares about a match? He knows, as though a match is significant. A guy once told me it's apikorsis. It's a logical question. It's a very good logical question. But now the question is, what does he care about? A galaxy? A galaxy is a chefza. But the same attention needed for the galaxy is needed for the match, is needed for the flake of snow, is needed for the droplet of rain, is needed for the blading grass, is needed for this little person. Because everything needs active creation every single moment. So if that's the case, there's no difference between the big thing and the small thing. In other words, there's no such a thing as a small thing. Does this describe to us who God is? No, but it describes to us who we are. Einoid Mulvade. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
And I learned that somebody said, what's the whole world? The whole universe minus Hashem, or Hashem minus the whole world.
Thank you, Rabbi. In short, you have this within the part of Isaac, the Sarauti, and Sarauti. Yes, the Soisa, the Samti Dom, the Dapan, Gami Hashem. There's many diikum. We're not going to go into that, right? I told you in trying with the Makas, that the Soisa is the Oisius, which is the DNA I gave in the Mitzrayim to be able to withstand it. And with that, you'll know that Hashem is.
Very good. Isaisa. Bruchim to you. What? Yeah.
Children, would like to this purple magazine. The second thing is I'll give you another line from Fred Hoyle from the astronomer. I don't know, maybe talking about from simple life to more complicated life. The evolution is going to take to complicated. He says the odds are the same as a hurricane going through a garbage dump and producing a 747.
The odds of what? Of DNA forming?
Going from simple cell life to life.
Complicated.
It's like going through a hurricane. The hurricane goes through a garbage dump and producing a 747. You mentioned Fred Hoyle. What's the
If it's Yesh Me'ayin, it has to be. It doesn't exist. Like you daydream. If Mitzat Seichel is a raya. To say he did it that way. If you want to use Seichel, there's a raya. If something is Yesh Me'ayin, you have to create it every moment. It's like you throw up a football in the air. It's not going to stay.
It's gravity, that's fine. It doesn't have to create the gravity.
No, Mitzad the Yesh.
In outer space, you can throw it up and it's stay.
Right, but I'm saying since the Yesh on its own doesn't exist, like the character in your daydream. No, but Mitzad Seichel, a Yesh that created from Ayin can't have independent existence. Because it reverts to what it is. Doesn't know with smartness. He's smart, but the Yesh is a Metzias that can't exist. So it's his energy. So it's right to his energy. But him and his energy are one. It's not. If it's his energy, it's right to his energy. You understand? It's not. His energy is not separate from him. Elamai, you want it to exist outside of his energy. So that doesn't mean he's smart. That means that's smart. You get it? Just because Shimshon HaGibber is powerful doesn't mean I could pick up a building. It means he could, not me. The Yesh on its own is Ayah. That's Mitzat Seichel. Das ist eine gute Scheile. Das fragst du eine gute Scheile. Jede Sache hat eine Neshama, das sagt der Risa. Ah? Ah? So, the message is like this. You have Tzelem Elokim. Yeah, and then you have Neshama. Tzelem Elokim is the ability of the person to be margish. You can't expect the ant. The ant is also from the Saddam Amaras. But the ant just functions. It goes, a process, and mitzvah that will never change. It always fulfills its purpose. Doesn't grow, but it also doesn't destroy anything. It does exactly what it has to do. The Tzelem Elokim is the ability for seichel, for reason, for investigation, to become aware of this. The neshama is shenat tifin. The neshama is an inyan from chelik elakam imal. It's already part of the boire, not the bria. That's what we spoke about Emunah. You were here a few weeks ago. That's the koyach Emunah. It's already a different inyan. So chelik elakam imal is part of the boire. It's not part of the bria. The Kuzri says that there's doimen, semeya, chai, medaber, and then there's the Yisrael. It's the neshama. It's part of the boire. It's not part of the bria. It's part of the boire. It's kilo a chelik of the boire. Now everything is a chelik of the boire. There's a difference of dibur and machshava. The difference of dibur and vayipach va'apol neshmasayim. It's a the neshama has a tfis in the boire himself. But you're right. In that Indian, there's every. Davar the neshama lama kavu havdala b'chein adas. Im ein das havdala b'nai. So pashtus it means to be able to separate that from the chabon das. Afalt dat van de chabon das. Wat dat van de chabon das? Te essen dat van de das. Te geven dat van de alt dat van de das. So one of the pshatim is brengt zich als das is attegem wat een das. The pashtus was the difference of Shabbos and Chol. Shabbos is dat Dvar Hashem and Chol is Dvar Hashem. Jeder moment van zman is Dvar Hashem. Was ist der Chilik von Kedusha und Chol? Dann darf man haben. Wer kann Mavdel sein zwischen ein Dvar Hashem und ein zweiter Dvar Hashem? Ate Chol und Adam das, das ist so Havdala. Das ist Chodesh, das ist Chol, das ist Shabbos.
Thinking emotionally, when you're saying that the Muslim are projector, you can have it like in reality nowadays. You put on a glasses, virtual reality, and you play a game. So you can choose, you can shoot this guy in the game, you can turn around, you can do everything in the game. But what is behind it? What is really behind it? Lines of code. Just words. Someone put the lines of code, and now you think you can choose, do whatever you want. Someone can just shut down the code or whatever, manipulate it.
Beautiful.
Well, what was the point of making the Hashem-made scientists if you don't think it's true? What's the whole thing of scientists? Hashem thing of scientists is speaking to Torah. People play games. So scientists don't think science is also such thing as Hashem. But Torah, we Hashem had such a thing as Hashem. Why does Hashem doesn't have such a thing as science?
Science is a beautiful thing. Science is the ability to know the world. Science be'etzem. The Mishnah Sanhedrin, they told Rabbi Akiva, if people are worshipping the sun, why does Hashem let the sun happen? So he said, "V'chia abedei lama mepnei hashaitim." You understand? You know the Mishnah?
Yeah.
You know the Mishnah? You understand the Mishnah? They told Rabbi Akiva, if people are worshipping the sun, why does Hashem let the sun exist? V'chia abedei lama mepnei hashaitim. You know what that means? Same thing. Science is a gift. A person could misuse it, of course. The mouth is also a gift. A person could misuse it. That's how the world is created. Everything could be used in productive ways and non-productive ways. A knife you could use to cut challah, and you'll be mekayim a mitzvah of lechem mishnah, and you could use it for other things. It doesn't mean that every knife is bad. Depends how you use it. Same as science. The Rambam writes in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, if you want to reach Ava and Yireh, you have to study natural science. Okay, not everybody held that way, but so the Rambam says. So she is boinen of how the world works. That's what he says. Your typhus? The fact that it's misused, yeah, that's true. Oila miloshin helam, the whole world is misused. That's the avoid of a person, not to get confused. That's why we have these shiurim. Shouldn't get confused.
It seems that we don't have any real permanence before creation of God's word. Hashem spoke and He created. So if we don't really have any permanence, how can we affect anything? We're not real, we know. We're only almost in the imagination of God. So,
But that's the most real thing, God.
it's only in His imagination. It's not
No, He spoke. Remember I said He spoke. It becomes concrete. There's a yesh.
But only God can but only God's the real thing.
Of course.
But only... Yeah.
Yeah. His dibur becomes yesh, yeah.
So the creation happened from the yesh, not from the ayin.
Right.
No, why Hashem called ayin?
No. That's a different question.
Why Hashem is called ayin? That's a good question. The answer to that is because that's a question generally. Why we say the Bria is yesh me'ayin? Would you say the Bria is yesh from Hashem?
From Dibur.
From Him, yeah. From Him is dibur. The answer is, there's a few reasons. I'll tell you two. One is because we call ayin that which we can't detect. We can't grasp it. We call it ayin. In our universe of what we can chap, it's ayin. We have no way of being a typhus.
So it's not really ayin. It's ayin to us.
Right, it's ayin to us. In other words, what do we typhus? We typhus things with our five senses, even with our seichel. Right? We detect things. Godliness is something we don't detect. We call it ayin. There's a deeper reason that legabe him it's called ayin. Why?
Because then somebody created in.
Because it's only a ray, it's only Isis. Lamashal. Let's say you're thinking up a daydream, right? So you have these things in your daydream. How much of your personality does it occupy? How much percent of all your thoughts? Ayin. Legabe, your whole presence, it's ayin. So legabe Hashem, it's called ayin. Ayin, so it's both ayin legabe us because we can't detect it, and it's ayin legabe him because it's only a ha'ara, it's only an ois, behei nivra elam haza. So it's ayin on both levels. That's why it's called ayin.
Also, when we experience emotions,
Verstehst? That's what the Balatanya
when we
writes.
experience emotions, is it really Hashem experience emotions through us? Because
That's beautiful in many ways, yeah.
We're like happy.
Yeah, yeah.
Like we're able to sing. Is that a
Yeah, that's a divine. It's everything is a divine, godly energy.
We're like His messenger.
We're always davak with Him, yeah.
So can we increase Hashem's?
Yeah, of course.
Add to Hashem.
Yeah, we are.
Even though He's perfect. Oh, so it's not really adding because we are, so to speak.
So to speak.
Part
Yeah.
of it. You can be part of something, but not the whole
The
thing.
Rambam writes, "Biyedias atzma yodeya kol hanevroyim, be'amitas himotzei nimtzu kol hanemtzayim." Biyedias atzma yodeya kol hanevroyim, because they all come from Him.
Thank you.
Just the pshat einoid mulvadai. Einoid mulvadai means that every nekuda in life, right? There's no two things. No Hashem and there's a world. Hashem and there's me.
We're not separate.
It's not separate. It's one achtos. It's one inyan. Yeah.
Pieces that Hashem is the total package, and all the people
And
are-
beyond.
Right.
We have no identity outside of God. God has an identity outside of us.
Well,
The characters in the daydream don't have an identity outside of you. But it doesn't mean that your whole identity is the characters in the daydream. The Gemara says, Hu mekayma shalaylam.
Right.
Chazal say, the Medrash says, Hu mekayma shalaylam, ve'in aylam mekayma. Right? You typhus?
Yeah.
Hast typhus given? Okay. Fleck. Over here in this shul, no? They have a lot in this shul. They smedrash you. Not tonight, but they'll have a few days. Wo sagt er? So steht auf Neshama Vayipach Bapa. Wenn Tanya steht, Neshama ist Machshava und der Olam ist Dibur. Es ist ein Primis Elikus. Das ist ein Primis Elikus. Ist Teufels, der Beure, nicht nur der Brie. Chitzainis, ja warte. Der Dibur kommt heraus, heißt es doch, dass es wie ein göttlicher Koyach schafft, a physische Metzies.
kleinere Tage ist halt Zimtzum.
Ja, die ganze Sache ist ein Zimtzum, aber...
Schuf ist ein kleinere Zimtzum. Das ist schon mal eine Kiste machen.
Ja.
Der zweite Weg ist, das Zink, das man macht, das Ding. Du kannst ja nicht an Ding, das hast du ja für die Beziehung.
Der Charakter, was existiert in deinem Kopf, hat nicht gebchirrt. Kann nicht tun, kann gehen, wo du willst. Ein Mensch hat dich gebchirrt. Sammetzies, was hat gebchirrt, Sammetzies, was hat Gashmis. Die Sache in deinem Daydream hat nicht kein Gashmis, die Mamoshes. Da hat es Mamoshes. Da sagt der Tanja, Illu nitner Schuss Laien Lides, hat man nicht gesehen, die Mamoshes. Es ist da Mamosh, aber man wird gesehen, der Koyach Chalaki. Also wie man guckt auf eine Sache, sagt man gleich der Atom. Man sagt nicht die ganze Sache. Man hat nicht die Kehlem, sagt man etwas achizoniische Sache. Nein, der Adam ist der Adam, aber der Pnimi ist von der Adam, das ist es nicht. Nein, DNA ist eine physische Sache. Aber das ist Masse, mit Masse man muss das nicht wieder ein. Der DNA hat euch DNA. Der DNA hat euch DNA. Der DNA ist it's brilliant, it's a geoines Mamisch. Staat ein geoines auf der Welt. Hat es doch euch DNA. So da, Kihu Amar Vaye. Hu Tziva V'Nevros, doch darf das sein. Einmal sollte gedacht Masada sein. Das ist der Isis Ruchnen von Asara Mamodas. Lechaira. Das steht nicht der Chassidus, aber das ist Lechaira da Havana. Ah? Einstein? Das weiß ich nicht.